Hey, what is going on guys, RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. With the decade coming to a close here, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at the 10 best Western League of Legends players of the decade, and by Western, meaning from NA and from EU. Now, of course, with any top 10 list, I do not expect you to 100% agree with it, so after watching the video, if you don't, be sure to let me know down in the comments below which players you would swap out, what players you would swap in. Also, let me know if you agree on the placing, and if you don't, which players you would move up on the list, and which players you would move down. So with all that being said, guys, let's get started. So coming in at my number 10 spot is going to be a player that if you've just started playing the game recently, or if you've just got into watching pro play recently, you've probably never even heard of who he is, but it's going to be Diamondprox or Diamond, and he was a very influential Western player in the early days of League. Although he hasn't found the most success in recent years, it was back in Season 2 and Season 3 especially to where he had so much impact in the Western scene, and not even in the Western scene, just all of League of Legends. He was one of the first junglers, or he might have been the first jungler to come up with the counter jungling strategy that a lot of people know of these days. Like, even if you were to ask a new player what counter jungling is these days, they'd probably give you a pretty good answer, but back in Season 2, it was a foreign strategy to a lot of players. Most junglers did not know what it was, and Diamond was one of the first junglers to really start to introduce counter jungling. He was also pretty well known for coming up with these off-meta strategies and bringing them into the pro scene and having good success with them, things like Udyr, Evelynn, Dr. Mundo. And then back in Season 2, playing for Moscow 5, being able to win IEM, being able to place 3rd at the Season 2 World Championships, and then Season 3, playing for Gambit and having a lot of success in the early days on Gambit. In my opinion, all of these reasons are as to why he's deserving of the number 10 spot on the list. So taking home the number 9 spot on the list, you would have seen him on the thumbnail. It's going to be Bjergsen, and I think without a doubt, Bjergsen domestically has been one of the strongest, if not the strongest mid laners that we have ever seen. Joining TSM back in Season 3, his impact was immediately felt, and especially in the early days of TSM, he was just such a dominant mid lane player. Now, depending on whether or not you rate a player based on only their domestic success or also on their international success, you could have a completely different spot for Bjergsen on your list. If you're only counting domestically, you could have him all the way up at like number 3, number 4 on this list for sure. But in my opinion, because he just has never had that international success, just never being able to perform when it matters the most on the biggest stage, that's the main reason as to why I don't have him higher up on my list. At the number 8 spot on the list, it is going to be Sneaky, and very similar to Bjergsen, domestically, Sneaky has been very dominant. He's always been throughout his entirety in the LCS. I would say at least a top 380 carry. I don't think he's ever been lower than a top 380 carry throughout his entire time playing in the LCS, and I just think that because of his consistency, being able to play at the highest level for as long as he has deserved him a spot on this list. Being able to qualify for 7 straight world championships, I think in itself is such an impressive feat, and it just goes to show the consistency that this player has had throughout his career. And then not only has he qualified for the 7 straight worlds, but he's also been able to have that international success, at least a lot more international success compared to most Western teams, being able to make it out of groups at multiple worlds, just barely missing out on semifinals at the Season 7 worlds, losing a 5-game set against WE. I think that because he has been able to perform on the big stage when it does matter most, that's the reason as to why I do have him 1 spot ahead of Bjergsen. So at the number 7 spot on the list, it is going to be Doublelift, and this was really difficult for me to choose the placing of Doublelift and Sneaky on this list, because you could definitely make an argument that either Sneaky has been more dominant than Doublelift, or Doublelift has been more dominant than Sneaky. So technically, like, I wish I could just put them both at like number 7 or something, tied for number 7, but I do have Doublelift 1 spot ahead of Sneaky here at the number 7 spot. Because of his success in the most recent years on Team Liquid and on TSM, just being so dominant, I really don't think you can argue, or it would be hard for you to argue, that Doublelift has been the best North American player, period. Domestically, Doublelift has just been so dominant in the recent years. 7 times LCS champion, he's been the LCS most valuable player back in 2018 summer, the LCS finals MVP in 2019 spring, so he just has so many accolades to show for his success. He has qualified for 5 straight world championships now, so not quite on Sneaky's level at 7 straight, but still very impressive nonetheless. He has not been able to find that international success though, and that's why it's really hard for me to put him above Sneaky or put him below Sneaky, because Sneaky has had that more international success, but I would say that Doublelift domestically has been a lot more dominant than Sneaky has, so you could make the argument for Doublelift being ahead of Sneaky or Sneaky being ahead of Doublelift, but I just think that both AD carries do deserve a spot on this list, and both have been top 2 in their role for pretty much the entirety of the LCS. And then let's also not forget that he pretty much single-handedly saved Team Liquid from relegations back in Season 7. If it weren't for Doublelift, it would have been pretty likely that Team Liquid would have been relegated. So coming in at the number 6 spot on the list, it is going to be Yellowstar, and I think it's pretty safe to say that Yellowstar has been the greatest support we've ever seen in Western League of Legends. Now obviously Yellowstar hasn't been playing for quite some time now, but he was really important in the early days of League. He started playing all the way back in Season 1. He is remembered most for his days on Fnatic for sure, and really just bringing Western League of Legends and putting it on the map. We just never really had a great international showing before that Fnatic team was able to make semifinals at Worlds. Domestically, Yellowstar was always very dominant, always top in his role. He was able to qualify for 5 straight world championships from Season 1 all the way to Season 5. Internationally, he did have some pretty good success. In Season 3, Fnatic was able to make it to semifinals, beating out Cloud9 in quarters. I think what a lot of people will remember though is Season 5 and that legendary run that Fnatic had, the 18-0 split, not losing a single game, going to Worlds, being the best hope that any Western team has ever had to win the World Championship, and Fnatic being able to make it to the semifinals at that Worlds was just so important for Western League of Legends. So at the number 5 spot on the list, this was also a really hard one to choose the placing of, and it's going to be xPeke, but similar to like placing Doublelift and Sneaky, it was so hard for me to decide whether or not I should have Yellowstar ahead of xPeke or xPeke ahead of Yellowstar. Both players have been super influential and very iconic to Western League of Legends. Now the reason to why I have xPeke 1 spot ahead of Yellowstar, or my argument for it, is because he was just a little bit more dominant for a longer period of time. Dating all the way back to Season 1, xPeke did win the Season 1 World Championships, and I just think that being on the map from the very start of League of Legends, and then also finding success throughout all the way up until like Season 5 with Origin there, I just think that is really impressive for xPeke. And then just forgetting about all the team success he had, which is still obviously very impressive, but the individual success he had and his legendary backdoor play on Kassadin, that in itself, being known as the xPeke to this day, makes him such an iconic player.
You can see there's coming in there. Peke is definitely up towards the Nexus. Kevin is going to be able to get towards him. He's trying to do it, but meanwhile they're in the base. Yellowstar's trying to defend them in the base. Peke is trying to take the Nexus down. Is anyone going to be able to deal with this one? Catches him with another axe. He's very low. They're pushing on the Nexus to him. Peke's back again. I do not believe it.
So at the number 4 spot here, it is going to be Soaz, and this is another one to where you could argue he goes up a spot on the list or he goes down a spot on the list. Similar to xPeke, Soaz was just so influential, especially in the early days of League. Back in the Season 1 World Championship, he was actually playing against xPeke in the finals, and they placed second. His team placed second against xPeke, so he was there all the way from the start, and he has just had so much success throughout his career. Soaz has been able to qualify for 6 world championships, so 1 behind Sneaky there, who's got 7, and what's even more impressive about this is that he's only not been able to make it out of groups once. Back in Season 4, Fnatic weren't able to make it out of groups. They placed 12th or 13th, but every single other year, the team that he's been on have been able to make it out of groups. So in Season 1, his team placed 2nd. Season 3, Fnatic was able to make it to the semifinals. Season 5, they also made it to semis, and then most recently, back in Season 8, they made it to the finals and lost out to IG. So overall, even though the past couple of years haven't been the best individually for Soaz, I really don't think you can take away how important of a player he has been throughout his entire career to Western League of Legends. So at my number 3 spot on the list, it is going to be Rekkles, and this is one to where you could argue Soaz jumps up here at this number 3 spot and Rekkles moves down, but I just think that because of how consistent Rekkles has been throughout his entire career, even to this day, being definitely like a top 3, top 2, you could even argue he is the best AD carry in his role right now. I think that because of his consistency throughout the years, he does deserve this number 3 spot on the list. In total, he's qualified for 5 world championships, and he's only not made it out of groups once, which was the same year that Soaz didn't make it out. This past year, Fnatic was able to make it to the quarterfinals, getting knocked out by xPeke, the eventual winners. In Season 8, they were able to make it to the finals, and that was so big for Western League of Legends, the first team ever to make it to the finals of the World Championships, and Rekkles was definitely a big part of that. And then if you just put the team success aside, individually he's been so monumental for EU, becoming the first player to ever reach 1,000 kills, and then this past season he became the first player to ever reach 1,500 kills. So what this player has been able to achieve for the amount of time he's been able to do it for, in my opinion, is deserving of the number 3 spot on this list. The runner-up on the list, which you would have seen from the thumbnail, is Caps. Now, even though this player has not been in the LCS for an extended period of time like a lot of the other players, the impact that he has had in this short amount of time that he's been in the scene makes him one of the best Western players of all time.
Oh my Jesus.
Dylan.
On my
Jesus. Dylan, we have to go main. No, we have to go Corky. No, Olaf Galio. Alisai, we're going main, by the way.
Are you serious?
He's Trundle main.
Shouldn't we just go Corky? But are you serious? Is it gonna win us the game?
Of course.
Step forward, Alfari will tank it up for the moment. Here comes Caps. Getting on to Alfari. Oh! 3-man knockup. Hero's entrance comes in. Another 3-man Caps. Caps! Kill time summer! And that is exactly what you want from your main man in a fight like this. Caps comes up huge!
Since entering the LCS or LEC back in 2017 or back in Season 7, this player just does not know how to lose. He's had a top finish in every single split that he's played in the LEC or in the LCS. He's qualified for every single world championship, so 3 straight now for him. And what puts him so high up on my list as opposed to a lot of these other players is that he's made it to 2 world championship finals, and not only 2, but 2 straight world championship finals. Individually, even though he might not have the same amount of achievements that Rekkles does because he's been playing for a much longer time, he's already got 3 different MVP awards. So an EU LCS MVP for summer of Season 8, LEC MVP for spring of Season 9, and then most recently the MVP of MSI for Season 9. So this player has just achieved so much in the short period of time that he's been playing, and for that reason, I do rate him so highly on my list. And then in my opinion, the greatest Western League of Legends player of the decade goes to Perkz. Now, the main reasons as to why I have him here at the number 1 spot is because this player has done nothing but win since entering the LEC or entering the LCS, multiple first place finishes, but what's even more impressive is that he's been able to finish first in multiple splits with completely different rosters. Over the past 4 seasons, I think it's pretty safe to say that G2 domestically has been the most dominant European team that we have ever seen, and there's only been one constant with every single one of those teams, and it has been Perkz. Now, we've seen players swap roles before in the past, but what we haven't seen is a player go from being one of the best in his role, swapping to a different role, and still remaining the best in that other role. Perkz was one of the best mid laners, if not the best in Europe, and then he swapped down to AD carry, still remained the best in that role or one of the best in Europe. So that is something that no other player can say that they've done. And then along with Rekkles and Jankos, he's only one of 3 players to ever reach 1,000 kills in the LEC. So even though internationally Perkz compared to Caps has not made it to as many Worlds finals, I think that domestically, because he's been able to perform at such a high level for such a long period of time, and because he's been able to do it on multiple different rosters, that's why to me, he deserves the number 1 spot on the list. So that is going to be it. That's going to round out the video. Those are, in my opinion, the 10 best Western League of Legends players of the decade. So be sure to let me know down in the comments below if you disagree with the list, what players you would take out, what players you would move in. If you just disagree with the placement of the players on the list, then let me know who you would move up. Let me know who you would move down. With that being said, guys, if you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.